He hadn't meant to stop. But something about the dusty roadside hospital, almost invisible between the red hills and the rusting fences, made him pull the truck over. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe it was the silence. Or maybe it was fate. Whatever it was, that day, as the sun dipped low and the desert light bled gold, Jack Carter stepped into that small-town clinic and found the beginning of something he never expected. Jack had been a rancher all his life. His father, and his father before him, had built Carter Ranch from nothing but grit and hard work. For decades, Jack had lived on that land, branding cattle, fixing fences, and chasing storms. But time, like the wind, wears down even the strongest mountains. After losing his wife to cancer 2 winters ago, Jack had grown quiet. He spoke mostly to his dog, Boone, and the wind that swept through the valley. He didn't need much. Just the land. And the memories. He was sitting in the waiting room of the clinic that day, waiting on some x-ray results for a busted rib he'd ignored for a week, when he saw her. She was curled up on one of the plastic chairs, her face pale, her breaths shallow. A nurse walked by and whispered to the receptionist. Words like critical and no insurance drifted through the air like smoke. The girl didn't move. Her name was Emily. Barely 22. Just a kid, really. She had no family left, lost her mother in a flood, her father to a heart attack. She was working at a diner in a town no one remembered, sending every extra dollar to pay off debts left behind. The doctors said her heart was failing. That she needed surgery. Fast. Jack didn't know what made him do it. Maybe it was her eyes. They reminded him of his daughter, Lily, who would have been about her age if she'd lived past that terrible winter fever. Or maybe it was that silent cry for help that only someone broken could recognize in someone else. He drove back to the ranch that evening and stood on the porch with Boone at his feet. The wind stirred the dust, and the setting sun bathed the fields in orange fire. That night, he made the call. He sold the ranch. Every acre, every fence post, every weathered barn and memory soaked into the soil. It wasn't easy. It felt like tearing out a piece of his soul. But he did it. And Emily got her surgery. He didn't expect to hear from her again. After all, what was he to her? Just a stranger who paid a bill too big to repay. He moved into a small apartment above an old hardware store in town, picked up part-time work, and tried to keep moving forward. But the silence followed him. 3 months later, he heard a knock on his door. It was Emily. She stood there, with a casserole dish in her hands and a nervous smile on her face. She'd found out where he lived from the hospital and had come to thank him. But more than that, she wanted to know why. Why would a stranger give up everything for her? Jack didn't have an answer. He just said, sometimes saving someone else is the only way you save yourself. From that day on, Emily came by often. She'd bring food, talk about books, ask about ranch life, and slowly, carefully, she began planting flowers in the empty pots on his balcony. Jack found himself laughing again. Not much. But enough. Boone took a liking to her. Jack even started writing again, something his wife used to beg him to do when he was younger. Over time, their bond grew stronger. Not romantic. Not like that. But something deeper. Family. She began calling him Pops. He'd never heard that word in his own house since Lily. And it fit. When Emily enrolled in nursing school, Jack helped her with the forms. He sat proudly in the back row when she gave her first speech. When she passed her exams, she surprised him with a framed picture, her and Boone sitting on the hood of his old truck, with the words, "You gave me life, now I'll spend it helping others." Jack never went back to ranching. But he found peace in the small things. In mentoring kids at the local school, helping fix bikes, sharing stories. And Emily, she gave him purpose. A reason to get up each morning. Someone to worry about. Someone to cheer for. Years later, when a reporter asked Emily what kept her going during the hardest parts of her recovery, she said, "A man gave up his whole world so I could live. So now, I try to make every day worth the price he paid." And when Jack was honored at the town hall for his quiet heroism, he just smiled and said, "I didn't save her. She saved me. I just didn't know it back then." Sometimes, the biggest acts of love come not from romance or grand gestures, but from silent sacrifices, and the healing that comes when two broken lives cross paths at the right time. He gave up his ranch. She gave him a reason to live again. And in that, they both found home.